Welcome to the Job Board Podcast. I am thrilled you're joining us today because the mission of this deep dive is going to, well, fundamentally change the way you think about your site's infrastructure.
Yeah, it really is.
We are pulling apart a truly fascinating piece of source material today. It's the IndexNow for Job Boards Implementation Guide, published by Kavuno, and we are going to get very strategic and very technical.
That's right. Because if you are a job board founder or an operator or a technical marketer, this deep dive is built entirely for you. We're going to look at the exact under-the-hood mechanisms that control whether your job listings are actually seen by candidates or if they're just, floating silently in the digital abyss while your competitors steal your traffic.
Exactly. And I want to start by framing the ultimate enemy of every single job board operator listening right now, and that enemy is time. Time is it is absolutely ruthless in your industry.
Oh, completely ruthless.
According to the data in the source material we're looking at today, 41% of job applications arrive within the first 48 hours of a listing going live. Let me just pause so that sinks in for you. 41% in the first 2 days.
And it actually climbs to 56% within 96 hours.
Right.
It is a staggering concentration of activity. I mean, most of the meaningful action, the actual return on investment for the employer who paid to post that job,
Right.
it happens in this tiny, incredibly compressed window.
Right. So if we look at traditional old school SEO, how long does standard search engine crawling actually take to discover new URLs on a site?
It can take days. I mean, sometimes depending on your site's authority and your crawl budget, it takes weeks.
Weeks. So if you're an operator relying on traditional search engine crawling, where you just publish a job to your database, maybe it auto-populates in your XML sitemap, and you just patiently sit there waiting for a search engine bot to show up.
You're quite literally losing the game before you even start playing.
Exactly. By the time that crawler finally wanders over to your site, discovers the new listing, processes the schema markup, and actually places it into the live organic search results, that peak 48-hour application window is slammed shut. The organic traffic eventually arrives, but the party is over. The best candidates have moved on.
It's a massive operational disconnect. The speed of the hiring market is fundamentally incompatible with the speed of legacy web crawlers.
So what does this mean for you, the listener? It means you need a completely different playbook. And over the course of this deep dive, we are going to hand you that exact playbook. We're going to start by breaking down the theory of the freshness gap and why job boards are uniquely punished by traditional indexing.
Yeah, and from there, we're going to introduce you to the technical blueprint that actually solves it. It's a dual protocol architecture. We'll be exploring how to combine the IndexNow protocol with the Google Indexing API to guarantee instant indexing.
And I mean instant, like every single time you publish a job, update a salary, or expire a filled role.
We'll walk you through the entire technical setup. We're going to cover everything from generating the correct API keys, handling bulk batch submissions for thousands of URLs, managing the complex lifecycle of a job post, and this is crucial, architecting high-volume queuing systems so your servers don't just crash under rate limits.
By the end of this conversation, you will have a complete step-by-step operational framework to ensure your job board functions in milliseconds rather than days. So let's get into the reality of the freshness gap, because we really need to establish upfront that job boards are a completely unique beast on the internet.
They really are.
You cannot treat the SEO infrastructure of a job board the way you treat, say, a B2B SaaS blog or a standard e-commerce store. It will fail.
It will absolutely fail.
Yeah.
And the core reason comes down to one specific technical metric that defines your industry: URL churn.
Yes, let's expand on URL churn, because if you look at a standard, highly successful corporate blog, how often are they publishing? Maybe 3 or 4 long-form articles a week. Those URLs are incredibly stable. An article goes live, it gets indexed, and ideally it stays live for years, slowly accumulating backlinks, user engagement, and domain authority. But you compare that to a mid-sized niche job board, you aren't generating 3 stable URLs a week.
Not even close. You might have several hundred brand new URLs, new job listings being created every single week. And if you step up to an enterprise-level aggregator,
Millions!
you are generating millions of new URLs. And here is the kicker. They don't just get created. They expire just as fast. The creation and deletion rate on a job board is practically 1-to-1.
Right. Every time a new job is posted, a URL is born. But every time a role is filled by a candidate or that standard 30-day listing period ends, that URL needs to die. At least it needs to die as far as the search engine index is concerned.
Which creates an absolute nightmare for your user experience and your revenue, if your infrastructure isn't built specifically to handle that churn. I mean, think about it from the candidate's perspective. They search for a specific role, they see your link in the search results, they click it, and they land on a page that just says, sorry, this role has been filled.
That is a terrible user experience. That candidate is going to immediately bounce back to the search results and click on your competitor. You just lost a potential registration, and you lost an applicant for your paying clients.
What's really critical to understand is how this specific dynamic, the massive constant creation of URLs paired with the equally massive expiration of URLs, creates a very distinct set of structural indexing problems.
According to the Kavuner Guide, there are 5 exact technical issues that job boards face that almost no other category of website has to deal with at this scale.
Yeah, let's take the time to break those 5 problems down one by one. Because if you are operating a board right now, diagnosing which of these is currently suppressing your traffic is the first step to fixing your revenue.
Let's do it. What is structural problem number 1?
Problem number 1 is exactly what we just touched on. Stale listings remaining in search results. When an expired job is still floating around in the search index, it sends candidates to dead pages. But the damage goes way beyond just a frustrated user.
Search engines actively monitor that behavior, right?
Aggressively. If a candidate clicks your link in the search results, lands on an expired job, and immediately hits the back button on their browser to return to Google or Bing, that behavior is called a short click or pogo sticking.
And from a strategic perspective, that is a glaring neon sign to the search engine algorithms.
It is. It tells the algorithm that your content is low quality, outdated, or completely irrelevant to the search query. If enough users pogo stick away from your stale jobs, the search engine will actively demote your entire domain's authority.
It's like running a retail storefront. You have a massive "We're open" sign in the window, but when the customer walks through the door, all the shelves are completely empty. The search engine is essentially the landlord of the internet, and they are eventually going to evict you from page 1 because you're annoying the shoppers.
Exactly, which leads us directly into structural problem number 2. Crawl budget waste.
This is a concept I think a lot of non-technical founders gloss over. What exactly is a crawl budget, and how are job boards wasting it?
So, search engines do not have infinite computing power. They allocate a finite crawl budget to every single domain on the internet. This budget dictates the maximum number of pages their bots will crawl on your site in a given time frame. They calculate this based on your site size, its health, and its overall popularity.
Makes sense.
Now, if you operate a job board with thousands of expired pages that you haven't properly de-indexed, or thousands of constantly shifting, filtered search result pages, like a page for remote marketing jobs that currently has 0 listings, the search engine bot is going to spend its precious daily allowance crawling garbage.
So the bot is wandering around the graveyard of filled jobs from 6 months ago, burning up its computational budget.
Yeah.
And as a result, it completely ignores the high-value premium listing that a client just paid you $300 to post 10 minutes ago.
That is the exact scenario.
Yeah.
You are forcing the search engine to waste its time on low-value URLs, leaving fewer resources to discover your actual revenue-generating content.
Wow. Okay, that brings us to problem number 3.
Problem 3 is the sheer scale of URL churn overwhelming scheduled crawling. We touched on this, but we need to emphasize that traditional scheduled crawling, where a bot visits your sitemap maybe once a day or once a week, physically cannot keep up with thousands of weekly creations and expirations.
It's perpetually out of date.
Right. It's like trying to photograph a fast-moving sports car with a very slow shutter speed. Every single picture just comes out blurry.
And in the SEO world, blurriness translates directly to lost traffic. Let's move to problem number 4, because I know a lot of savvy operators struggle with this specifically because they are actually trying to be proactive with their growth. Index bloat from programmatic pages.
Yes, programmatic SEO is an incredibly powerful and popular growth lever for job boards. You write a script that generates location, category, and company pages at scale. So you automatically create pages for nursing jobs in Chicago, nursing jobs in Dallas, nursing jobs in Austin, and so on.
It's a fantastic strategy to capture all that long-tail search intent.
It is, but here is the technical trap. Many of those programmatic pages thin out over time. What happens when, purely by chance, all the nursing jobs in Austin expire this week, and there are temporarily no new ones posted?
You now have a live index page sitting on your domain with absolutely 0 content on it.
Exactly. In SEO terms, that is a thin page. Without active de-indexing signals or real-time freshness signals, these thin programmatic pages accumulate in the search index over time. They bloat the index, drastically diluting your domain's overall quality score.
You're watering down the soup. Every thin, empty page makes the whole site look less authoritative to the search algorithms. And finally, the fifth structural problem, duplicate content confusion.
This happens constantly, specifically with template-based listings. Think about a massive national retailer or a delivery logistics company posting multi-location jobs. They are hiring a delivery driver in 50 different zip codes simultaneously.
Right.
The job description is 100% identical. The requirements, the benefits, the company boilerplate identical. The only piece of data that changes is the city and zip code.
To a crawler that is just scanning text, that looks incredibly suspicious. It looks like you just copy-pasted the exact same article 50 times to spam the index and grab more real estate.
Exactly. Crawlers handle this pattern very poorly unless you provide incredibly clear canonical tags and, crucially, immediate freshness signals. If those 50 identical pages trickle into the index slowly over a month, the bot gets confused and might flag them as duplicate spam.
But if they all appear instantly...
If all 50 appear instantly, with proper structured data signaling that they are new, distinct entities tied to specific geographic locations, the bot processes them correctly. But without those real-time freshness signals, you are highly likely to get penalized for duplicate content.
So, to summarize the battlefield here, we have stale listings causing pogo sticking, massive crawl budget waste, scheduled crawlers failing to handle URL churn, programmatic index bloat, and duplicate content penalties. If you are operating a board right now, I can almost guarantee at least 3 of these are actively suppressing your organic traffic as we speak. So here is my operational advice for you. Before you even think about the technical setup we are going to discuss, I want you to run a very specific audit. Look at your current organic job traffic in your analytics platform and map it against your average time to fill for a job.
That's a great metric to look at.
Right. Are your candidates landing on your job postings from organic search on day 2? Or are they trickling in on day 12? If your average time to fill is 10 days, but your organic search traffic isn't peaking until day 8 because of crawl lag, you can clearly see exactly how much money and how much candidate volume you are losing to this freshness gap. You are trying to fill a bucket that has a massive hole blown out of the bottom.
And that realization perfectly sets the stage for the architectural solution. If the core problem is the inherent latency of traditional pull-based scheduled crawling, the only viable solution has to be push-based. Which brings us to the centerpiece of this deep dive, IndexNow.
Let's talk about the hero of the hour. I know a lot of operators have heard the term thrown around in SEO circles, but what exactly is IndexNow?
At its core, IndexNow is an open-source protocol. It was co-created by Microsoft Bing and Yandex, and it officially launched in October of 2021. The easiest way to conceptualize it is that it fundamentally invokes the traditional relationship between a website publisher and a search engine.
The source guide uses a great analogy here, differentiating between pull-based and push-based systems. Can we unpack that distinction?
Definitely.
Yeah.
In traditional pull-based indexing, the search engine holds all the power. You publish a job, you update your sitemap, and then you basically sit on your hands and wait. The search engine pulls data from your site entirely on its own schedule.
Right.
Maybe it visits daily, maybe weekly, or maybe whenever its algorithm decides it has enough spare crawl budget. You, as the job board operator, have absolutely no mechanism to signal to the engine, hey, this specific URL just went live 5 seconds ago, and it's highly time sensitive. You need to look at it right now.
You're just waiting at the bus stop, but there is no schedule posted, and you have no idea if the bus is even running today.
Precisely. IndexNow completely changes that dynamic to a push-based system. The millisecond content changes on your site, whether a brand new job is published, the salary range on an existing job is updated, or the listing finally expires. Your server automatically sends an HTTP request, essentially pinging the participating search engines.
So you're sending an active notification.
You are actively pushing a notification that says, this specific URL just changed. When the search engine receives that ping, it prioritizes that exact URL for an immediate recrawl, completely bypassing their normal, slow, scheduled crawl queue.
So you are no longer waiting for the bus. You're calling a direct Uber right to your server's location. And one of the most brilliant architectural features of IndexNow is that it uses a federated model. What does federation mean for a developer or an operator trying to implement this?
A federated model is a massive win for reducing technical debt. It means you do not have to knock on every single search engine's door individually. You only need to submit your ping to one single participating endpoint.
Just one.
Just one. For example, you configure your server to send the notification to the generic api.indexnow.org endpoint. The protocol itself then automatically routes that exact same notification to every other search engine participating in the IndexNow network. You don't need to build, monitor, and maintain 5 separate API integrations. You build one single integration, and it federates out to the rest of the ecosystem automatically.
That is huge for lean engineering teams. Now, let's talk about the sheer scale of this adoption. Because if you haven't been paying attention to SEO infrastructure lately, you might think this is some niche experimental project. But based on the late 2025 data from the source material, the numbers are astronomical.
Well, they're massive.
IndexNow is currently processing over 5 billion URLs a day. It has been adopted by over 80 million websites. But here is the statistic that should make every job board operator stop what they are doing and listen closely. By late 2025, URLs submitted via IndexNow accounted for 22% of all clicked URLs on Bing. Nearly a quarter of all clicks on the entire Bing search engine are coming from content that was instantly indexed through this push protocol.
Those numbers are undeniable proof of scale. However, before a listener rushes to implement this, thinking it will instantly double their traffic, we need to make a very crucial technical clarification.
Let's hear it. What's the catch?
The catch is understanding what the protocol actually does. IndexNow is a discovery signal. It is not a magic indexing bullet.
Okay, that is a very important strategic distinction. Explain the difference.
Submitting a URL via IndexNow simply tells the search engines, something changed here and you should prioritize looking at it. It forces them to bump your URL to the very front of the crawl queue. But, and this is vital, it does not bypass the search engine's quality filters. It does not guarantee that the page will actually be indexed if the underlying content is terrible. And it certainly does not guarantee you a high ranking on the search results page. If you push a spammy, thin programmatic page with no real value to the user, the bot will come look at it instantly, it will evaluate it instantly, and it will throw in the trash instantly.
Right. It guarantees you an immediate audience with the judge, but it doesn't guarantee you a not guilty verdict. Your content still has to be high quality. Your job posting structure data still needs to be perfectly formatted. Your page speed still matters. But the massive advantage is that at least you aren't waiting in the lobby for 3 days just to get rejected. You get your feedback immediately.
Exactly. It removes the latency of discovery, but it absolutely does not replace the need for pristine SEO fundamentals.
Okay, so let's talk about the players on the field. Who is actually in this federated network? If I push a job listing to IndexNow today, whose bots are going to come knocking on my server?
The participant list has been growing steadily since its launch. As of early 2026, you have the original co-creators, Microsoft Bing and Yandex. You have Never, which is massive. They are the dominant search engine in South Korea. You have Seznam, which is the leading engine in the Czech Republic. You have Yep, which is the search engine built by the massive SEO software company Ahrefs. And crucially, as of mid-2025, you have Amazon Bot.
We absolutely need to dive into why Amazon Bot changes the game in a second. But first, I know what every single technical marketer listening is screaming at their phone right now. What about Google? We have to address the massive multi-billion-dollar elephant in the room.
We do. And the reality is, Google does not support IndexNow.
Which is wild when you look at the history, right? Back in late 2021, Google publicly stated they were going to test the potential benefits of the IndexNow protocol. And here we are, over 4 years later, and absolutely nothing has shipped. They are completely intentionally opted out.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the why. Because the reasons are entirely structural and strategic, not technical. Google has the engineering talent to implement the IndexNow protocol before lunch, if they actually wanted to.
Sure.
But the reality is, Google currently operates the largest, most sophisticated, and most expensive crawl infrastructure on the planet. They've invested billions of dollars in capital expenditure over the last 2 decades building out Googlebot. IndexNow was designed to solve a very specific discovery problem, finding new URLs quickly. But Google largely doesn't have a discovery problem. Their crawlers are already everywhere, all the time.
That makes total sense. And let's look at the strategic reality of the federated model itself. If Google joins IndexNow, the protocol requires them to submit and share data through a federated endpoint. Google has absolutely zero strategic incentive to hand their biggest competitors, like Bing and Yandex, a real-time, pristine feed of every single content change happening on the web.
Exactly. Why would the market leaders subsidize the data collection of the challengers? They wouldn't. Furthermore, Google doesn't feel the need to join IndexNow because they already have their own proprietary fast-track mechanism, the Google Indexing API. We're going to spend a lot of time dissecting that shortly. Google's crawl infrastructure also collects massive amounts of behavioral and rendering data that goes well beyond simple content discovery, so they heavily prefer to keep publishers locked into their proprietary ecosystem.
So this creates a massive friction point. If Google, the undisputed heavyweight champion of search traffic, isn't using IndexNow, a lot of operators are going to think, why should I even bother with this? Only Google matters. I hear this from technical marketers constantly. If it's not Google, I don't have the engineering resources to care.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
And I want to be very clear, that is a massive, massive strategic error for job boards. Let's talk about why Bing and Amazon actually matter a huge deal to your bottom line, and why ignoring them is leaving money on the table.
Let's start with Bing, because many job board operators fundamentally underestimate Bing's market share, particularly in highly lucrative specialized verticals. If you run a B2B job board, a healthcare job board, an enterprise software board, or a board targeting engineering and cleared government contractors, you absolutely cannot ignore Bing.
Because of the corporate lock-in.
Exactly, because Microsoft Edge is the default lockdown browser in massive enterprise and government IT environments. Millions of corporate employees are sitting at their desks, searching for their next career move on their work-issued laptops, and those laptops force them to use Edge and Bing.
Exactly. If you are ignoring Bing, you are basically telling your clients that you don't care about capturing applications from employed enterprise professionals. It is a huge strategic blind spot. But the really exciting part, and the part that is evolving so rapidly as we sit here in 2026, is the AI connection.
This is the real kicker, and it changes the entire value proposition of IndexNow. Where do you think all these new AI agents and chat interfaces get their real-time web data? Microsoft Copilot, obviously, is built entirely on top of Bing's index.
Right.
But ChatGPT's web search features also pull heavily from Bing when answering real-time queries. DuckDuckGo, which continues to hold a very strong privacy-focused user base, sources its organic results primarily from Bing.
Right. Let's play out a hypothetical scenario. A candidate opens up an AI chat interface and types, "Find me remote senior React developer jobs that have been posted in the last 24 hours. That AI agent is not going out and crawling the open web itself in that exact millisecond. It is querying an underlying index.
Yeah.
And if your job board pushed that brand new React developer job to IndexNow 10 minutes ago, it is already sitting in Bing's index, which means it is instantly available to Copilot, to ChatGPT, to DuckDuckGo. Instant Bing indexing directly equals instant AI search visibility. If you are in that index, the AI agent literally doesn't know your job exists.
And that dynamic brings us to Amazon Bot, which joined the protocol in mid-2025. This is a fascinating addition to the network. Amazon's participation means that any URL you submit to IndexNow feeds directly into Amazon's rapidly growing AI features and search surfaces.
That's huge.
If your job board publishes roles at Amazon-affiliated companies, e-commerce brands, logistics firms, or if you simply want visibility in whatever future AI discovery layers Amazon is building, this is zero-effort upside. You push your data to one single federated endpoint, and you instantly feed Bing, the major AI chat agents, and Amazon all at once.
So we've established that the freshness gap is actively killing your conversion rates, and that IndexNow is the highly efficient push-based protocol that instantly alerts the Bing and AI ecosystems that your jobs exist. But we still have the Google problem. You cannot ignore Google. This brings us perfectly to the core architectural thesis of the Kavuno Guide and the operational blueprint that every modern job board needs to adopt.
The thesis is simple. You need a dual protocol strategy. These two systems, IndexNow and the Google Indexing API, are complementary. They are not competing.
You need both. That is the strategy. You use the strict proprietary Google Indexing API to secure your Google search traffic, and you use the open source IndexNow protocol to capture literally everything else.
Let's do an extensive technical comparison of the specifications for both protocols, because this is where the actual development work happens and where the friction points lie. Let's look at the scope, the limits, and the friction of implementation for both.
Let's start with scope. As an operator, what kind of content can I actually send to these APIs?
The scope is a massive differentiator. IndexNow is entirely content agnostic. It accepts absolutely any content type on your domain. You can send it a standard job posting, a company profile page, a blog post about resume tips, a programmatic location page, anything you want indexed.
And what about Google? Let's say I write a brilliant 2,000-word guide on how to negotiate a salary, and I want it indexed instantly. Can I push that through the Google Indexing API?
Absolutely not. Google's API is incredibly strict. It was purpose-built and launched back in June 2018 specifically to accelerate schema markup into their specialized Google for Jobs feature. Therefore, the Google Indexing API strictly accepts URLs that contain valid job posting schema or live stream video URLs. That is it.
So it rejects everything else.
If you try to push your career advice blog posts or your company profile pages through the Google Indexing API, you are explicitly violating their terms of service, and they will likely revoke your API access entirely.
That is a huge operational difference. IndexNow is a tool for your entire site's infrastructure. Google's API is a specialized tool just for the job listings themselves. Okay, let's talk about limits. How much volume can these pipes handle, especially for the enterprise operators listening?
IndexNow is built for massive internet-level scale. You can send up to 10,000 URLs in a single POST request batch. And while there is no officially documented daily maximum, it is designed to handle millions of changes without putting a sweat, provided you respect their server rate limits, which we will discuss later.
Okay, 10,000 per batch. And Google?
Google's indexing API, on the other hand, is much more constrained. You are capped at sending only 100 URLs per batch request. But more importantly, Google enforces a default daily limit of just 200 URLs per day.
Wait, 200 URLs a day. Let's play that out. If you're a mid-sized, growing niche board, you might publish 100 new jobs a day. But you also need to update 50 jobs and expire 50 jobs. You blow through that 200 URL limit by lunchtime.
Exactly. You hit a wall incredibly fast. Which brings us to the friction and setup complexity. With Google, if you need to exceed that 200-a-day limit, and almost every serious job board will shows, you are now facing a significant administrative hurdle.
What changed?
In September 2024, Google quietly changed their policy. You now require manual approval for quotas above 200 per day. You have to submit a form, thoroughly explain your specific business use case, and wait for a human reviewer at Google to approve your request. There is no guaranteed timeline for this approval.
And even getting to the point where you can request that quota increase is a massive headache for a developer, right? Let's talk about the actual setup process for Google.
The Google setup is highly complex and requires significant back-end engineering. You have to create a Google Cloud Platform or GCP project. You have to configure OF 2.0 authentication. You have to generate a specific service account, download secure JSON key files, store those files securely on your server, and then manually add that service account email address as a verified owner in your Google Search Console. It is a very heavy lift.
Now contrast that nightmare with the friction of setting up IndexNow.
IndexNow has almost zero friction. It is breathtakingly simple by comparison. You generate a standard API key, you host a plain text file on your server to prove you own the domain, and you make a standard HTTP POST request. There is no cloud project to configure, no OF 2.0 to navigate, and absolutely no manual human approval process.
Night and day.
For a startup job board launching today, IndexNow is the only instant indexing option you can have fully operational and pushing URLs on day one.
It is incredible how different the approaches are. But even with these two powerful real-time push protocols running side-by-side in your backend, the Kavuno guide makes a very strong, very necessary point. We cannot ignore the old-school safety net. We have to talk about the XML sitemap fallback.
Yes, this is a critical piece of infrastructure. You must absolutely maintain your traditional dynamic XML sitemaps. Think of IndexNow and the Google Indexing API as the express lanes on the highway. They are fast, they are efficient, and they are where you want your traffic to go. But occasionally, an API request fails.
Right.
Maybe your server drops the connection. Maybe you hit a rate limit and your internal queue fails to process. Or maybe a junior developer pushes a bug in your code that prevents the payload from firing correctly.
Software breaks. It is the only absolute guarantee in the tech industry.
Exactly. So your XML sitemaps act as the passive, slow, but highly reliable safety net. They ensure that if your instant push notifications fail for any reason, the search engines will still, eventually, discover the new or expired URLs on their next routine scheduled crawl. Every single time you publish, update, or delete a job, your system should be updating the XML sitemap in the background automatically. It is a mandatory belt and suspenders approach to SEO.
Okay, before we get into the actual server setup and the lines of code, I want to pause and make sure I'm fully grasping the architecture we're talking about. We've covered a tremendous amount of strategic ground.
Let's recap.
We are essentially saying that job boards live and die by a 48-hour application window, and traditional web crawling is fundamentally too slow to serve this business model, causing a massive freshness gap that bleeds revenue. To win this game and capture peak organic traffic, operators must abandon pull-based weighting. They have to implement a dual protocol, push-based architecture. You use Google's strict, complex API to secure your Google search traffic, and you use the open source, massive-scale IndexNow federated network to instantly alert Bing, Amazon, and the entire ecosystem of AI chat agents. And you back it all up with a perfectly structured XML sitemap.
That is the complete strategic landscape. You've got the map. Now, let's get our hands dirty. Let's walk the listener through the exact technical implementation blueprint. How do we actually wire up IndexNow on a server?
I love it. Let's role play this. Let's pretend I'm a technical marketer or a junior backend developer, and my founder just tasked me with setting this up this afternoon. Step 1, the key file. Walk me through the process.
Step 1 is proving to the search engines that you actually owned the domain you were trying to submit URLs for. Otherwise, a malicious competitor could push fake URLs or deletion signals for your job board. You prove ownership by generating an API key. This key needs to be a string of alphanumeric characters between 8 and 128 characters long.
Does the specific format of the key matter?
The officially recommended format is a lowercase hexadecimal string, so it will look something like a long string of numbers and the letters A through F. For example, A3, F8B, and so on. You don't need a special tool for this. You can generate this using any random hex generator online. Or if you log into Bing Webmaster Tools, they have a dashboard that will auto-generate one for you with one click.
Okay, so I have my random 32-character hex string copied to my clipboard. What is the next move?
You create a simple plain text file. The name of the file must be the exact API key string followed by .txt. Inside the file itself, you paste the exact API key string again. No white space, no extra lines of code, no HTML, just the key.
They keep it simple.
Then, you upload this file to the root directory of your domain. So it should be publicly accessible at yourdomain.com/key.txt.
Why do we have to do this specific file dance? What is happening on the server side?
This is the validation step. When your server sends its very first HTTP request to IndexNow telling them to index a new job, the very first thing the receiving search engine will do is pause and send a bot to ping that text file on your server.
To check if you really own it?
Exactly. If the file exists and the key inside matches the key you send in your API request, the engine says, okay, this person is authorized, and it processes the URL. If the file isn't there, or it returns a 404 error, or a firewall blocks the bot, your submission is immediately rejected.
So step 1 is generate the key, upload the text file to the root domain, and make sure it's public.
Got it. Step 2, single URL submission. Let's say I just want to send one single new job listing to the network to test the pipes. How do we do that? A single URL submission is the simplest integration possible. It is a standard HTTP GET request. You just construct a specific URL string and ping it. The base address you are hitting is the federated endpoint-api.indexnow.org indexnow.
Okay.
To that base address, you simply append two query parameters.url, which is the encoded URL of the job you just published, and key, which is your hex API key.
So the final string looks something like api.indexnow.org indexnow.url myjobboard.com/job123 and key, my secret key.
Exactly. It's so simple that you can literally test this by pasting that fully constructed URL into your web browser and hitting enter. In a production backend environment, you would configure your language, whether that's Node.js, Python, or PHP, to execute a simple fetch or a CURL request to that endpoint the exact millisecond the job is saved to your database.
That is incredibly easy. But let's scale this up. What if I'm doing a massive nightly cleanup, or I just imported a bulk CSV of 500 jobs from a new ATS integration? I don't want to make 500 individual GD2 requests and hammer the server. That brings us to step 3, batch URL submission.
Right, for bulk operations, you pivot from a GET request to an HTTP POST request. This is where the true scale of the protocol shines. You can send up to 10,000 URLs in a single payload. You send a JSON object to the exact same endpoint, api.indexnow.org indexnow.
What's in the JSON object?
The JSON payload requires 4 specific key value pairs. First, host, which is your domain name, like www.yourjobboard.com. Second, key, which is your API key. Third, key location, which is the full absolute URL path to where that text verification file lives on your server. And fourth, URL list, which is simply an array containing up to 10,000 URLs that you want indexed.
Let me stop you there because I know developers. Are there any hidden traps here? Let's say I have 10,000 URLs ready to go. Can I just throw them all in that array and blast it out?
There is one very strict constraint here, and if you miss it, you will spend days debugging. All URLs in a single batch POST request must share the exact same host.
Ah, okay. Let's explore the pain of that. What does that mean in practice for a complex job board? Let's say I'm running a large healthcare board. I have nursing.myboard.com and admin.myboard.com. A junior developer pushes an update and bundles 5,000 URLs from both subdomains into one JSON payload. What exactly does the IndexNow server do?
It rejects the entire batch. It doesn't gracefully filter out the bad ones and process the good ones. It throws out the whole payload. Even though they are on the same root domain, the subdomain makes them a completely different host in the strict eyes of the protocol.
Ouch.
If you mix them, the batch fails. You have to write logic to separate them and submit one POST request for the nursing subdomain and a completely separate POS request for the admin subdomain. And if you aren't actively logging your response codes, you might not even realize your massive batch just failed.
That is a crucial detail. Speaking of logging response codes, let's decode what the server says back to you. When you fire off these GUIT or POST requests, the IndexNow server responds. Let's walk through the essential operational responses. What does a 200 mean?
A 200 OK is the golden ticket. It means your payload was formatted correctly, your key was validated against a text file, and your URLs have been successfully submitted to the priority crawl queue. No further action is needed on your part.
Perfect. What about a 202? And let me give some operational advice here before you even explain the technical side, listeners. Do not panic when you see a 202 on your very first submission. Do not wake up your lead engineer at 2 a.m. It is totally normal. But why does it happen?
A 202 accepted means the server received your request perfectly, but it is currently pending key validation. As I mentioned earlier, this almost always happens on the very first time you ever submit a URL to the network. The search engine has accepted the request, but their bot hasn't actually fetched your .txt file from your root domain yet.
So it's just a holding pattern.
They're putting your submission in a temporary holding pattern while they dispatch a bot to go check your server. Once they verify the text file is there, all your subsequent submissions will start returning that 200 OK.
So if you see a 202, just take a breath, get a cup of coffee, and try another submission in 10 minutes. It'll probably be a 200. Okay, what if I get a 403?
403 forbidden means your key is invalid. But, practically speaking, this almost always means the search engine bot tried to read your text file and failed. You need to immediately check your server configuration. Open an incognito browser or turn off your Wi-Fi and use your cellular data and try to load that text file URL. If it is being blocked by a firewall or your CDN has aggressive bot protection enabled that is blocking BingBot or it's returning a 404, you need to fix your server routing immediately.
That makes sense. It's usually a firewall issue. How about 422?
422, unprocessable entity. This goes back to the trap we just discussed. It means a URL in your payload does not match the host parameter you declared in the JSON. You mixed subdomains, or maybe you accidentally included an external link, or you mixed HTTP and HTTPS protocols. Your backend needs to sanitize that URL array before sending it.
And finally, the big one for the enterprise operators running massive volume 429.
429. Too many requests. You have been rate limited by the search engine, you are firing off payloads too aggressively, and the server is telling you to back off before it drops your connection entirely. We're going to discuss exactly how to handle this gracefully with exponential backoff in just a few minutes when we tackle high-volume queuing.
And that is the perfect transition into the next major concept, lifecycle operations and high-volume queuing. Because knowing how to construct a JSON payload and send an HTTP request is only 10% of the battle. The real magic, the engineering feat that separates an amateur job board from a multi-million-dollar enterprise machine, is tying these API requests seamlessly to your database lifecycle. Before we build this out, I need to reiterate the danger of stale listings. We talked about pogo sticking earlier, but the risk goes deeper. If you leave filled roles on your site and you continue to serve valid job posting structured data to Google for jobs that candidates cannot actually apply to, Google doesn't just quietly lower your rank. Google will issue manual actions. These are actual human-reviewed penalties against your domain. It is considered deceptive practice, and your entire site can be delisted.
The stakes are incredibly high. You must manage the lifecycle flawlessly. In a modern job board architecture, you should conceptualize content lifecycle events as database triggers. There are 4 specific lifecycle triggers, and we need to detail exactly what your system must do at each phase to coordinate both IndexNow and the Google API simultaneously.
Number 1, published. A recruiter clicks submit, their credit card is charged, and the brand new job is written to your database. What happens under the hood?
The precise moment that database record is written and marked active, your back-end system fires a parallel execution. First, It constructs a payload with the new URL and POSes it to the IndexNow federated endpoint. Second, because it's specifically a job listing, it creates a secure, authenticated request to the Google Indexing API, sending a specific URL IP-dated action for that exact same URL. Both search ecosystems are notified in milliseconds. And of course, your XML sitemap generates in the background.
Flawless. Now, trigger number 2, updated. The recruiter realizes they forgot to add the salary range, or they need to change the location from on-site to remote, so they go back into their dashboard and edit the listing. Why is this so important for indexing?
This is critical for click-through rates. Any substantive change, especially salary, job title, or remote status, requires an immediate recrawl so the search engines show the correct, updated snippet in the search results. If the search result says $50,000 but the job page says $70,000, you have a massive disconnect.
Right.
When the database record updates, you fire the exact same sequence as the published trigger. You resubmit the URL to IndexNow, and you send another URL IP-dated action to Google. Both protocols are explicitly designed to accept repeated submissions for the same URL without any penalty whatsoever. They simply interpret it as a signal to come look again because the data mutated.
Trigger number 3, expired. This is where the debates happen in the SEO community. The 30-day listing window closes, or the recruiter explicitly clicks Mark as filled. We need to talk about the difference between a soft expire and a hard expire. What are the operational differences?
There are two completely different ways to handle an expiration, and they require different technical handling. Let's look at a soft expire first. This is a strategy where you want to keep the URL physically live on your site to preserve the user experience. If a candidate bookmarked a job or clicks an old link in an email from a week ago, the page still loads.
But you have to change the page.
Yes. And this is the key. You programmatically strip all the job posting schema from the HTML, put a massive banner at the top saying, "This role has been filled," and you populate the page with links to related currently open jobs.
And what do you send to the APIs?
In a soft expire scenario, you still submit the URL to IndexNow. Why? Because you want the bot to come instantly, crawl the page, see that the schema is gone, and update their index so the job stops showing up in the specialized job search carousels.
And what about a hard expire? What does that look like?
A hard expire is when you completely kill the page. The URL no longer resolves to any content. But, and this is a massive operational detail, you do not return a standard 404 not found error. You must configure your server to return an HTTP 410 gone status code.
I want to highlight this for the founders who aren't in the code base every day. Explain the difference between a 404 and a 410 and why the search engines care so much.
A 404 simply means, I cannot find this resource right now. When a bot sees a 404, it thinks, maybe the server is glitching or maybe the link is temporarily broken, I'll come back and check again tomorrow. It keeps the URL in a sort of purgatory.
Right.
A 410 explicitly means, this content is gone, it has been permanently deleted, and it is never coming back. Do not ever come back looking for it. It is the absolute strongest, most definitive de-indexing signal you can send to a crawler.
So for a hard expire, the URL returns a 410. You then submit that URL to IndexNow. IndexNow explicitly accepts 4 and 10 URLs as a priority de-indexing signal. Simultaneously, you send a specific URL deleted action to the Google Indexing API. The page vanishes from both indexes almost immediately. That is the gold standard for site hygiene. And here is a piece of strategic advice regarding deletions. Trigger number 4 is deleted when you actually purge the record from the database entirely. The protocol is exactly the same. Return a 410, submit to IndexNow, send URL deleted to Google. But listen to me very carefully. Never, ever redirect deleted jobs to your generic homepage.
Oh, please don't do that.
I see expensive SEO agencies tell job boards to do this all the time under the guise of preserving link juice. It is terrible, destructive advice for job boards. If you redirect a deleted job for a senior accountant in Denver to your generic homepage, Google treats that as a soft 404. It massively confuses the crawler, degrades the topical relevance of your homepage, and totally messes up your index status. Just let the page die gracefully with a 410.
Clean, explicit signals are always better than confusing, manipulative redirects. Every time. Now let's address the enterprise operators listening. If you are running a board that posts more than 500 jobs a day, or your platform runs massive nightly cron jobs that expire 5,000 jobs at midnight, you need to think deeply about batching and rate limit.
Right, because if your midnight script tries to hit the IndexNow API 5,000 times in 10 seconds, they're going to slap you with that 429 too many requests error we mentioned earlier. Your server IP will be flagged. How do we engineer a system to prevent this?
You have to implement a robust queuing system. Instead of pinging the API synchronously every single time a database trigger fires, the trigger simply pushes the URL and the event type into a queue. This could be a Redis queue, a RabbitMQ instance, or even just a dedicated database table.
And then what?
Then you build a worker script that runs on a schedule, say every 5 to 15 minutes. This worker pulls the URLs from the queue, batches them into efficient chunks of up to 10,000, and sends one single clean POST request to IndexNow.
That makes perfect sense for smoothing out the spikes. But what happens if the worker script does hit a 429 error? Let's say Bing is experiencing heavy load and throttling traffic.
This is where your engineering team must implement exponential backoff.
Yeah.
If your worker receives a 429, it must not instantly retry. That will just get you blocked entirely. It needs to pause.
Oh.
The standard architectural pattern is to wait 60 seconds, then retry the payload. If it gets another 429, you double the wait time to 120 seconds. If it fails again, wait 240 seconds. You keep doubling the delay, but you cap the maximum wait time at 10 to 15 minutes. This logic gives the receiving server time to cool down and reset your rate limit window without you accidentally dropping critical data.
But when you have thousands of items backing up in a queue during a rate limit pause, not all URLs are created equal. We need to talk about prioritizing that queue. How should a strategic operator rank these tasks?
It absolutely comes down to revenue generation and immediate user experience impact. Priority one must always be new listings. Getting a new job indexed immediately is your core value proposition to the employer who paid you money. Those URLs skip to the front of the line.
Makes total sense.
Priority two is updated listings. Important for accuracy, but slightly less time critical than brand new inventory. Priority three is expired and deleted listings. While these are crucial for your overall long-term SEO health, a delay of a few hours on a deletion isn't going to ruin an active hiring campaign. These can often be processed in massive batches during off-peak hours.
And there is one more scale hack mentioned in the Kavuno guide, specifically for the absolute titans of the industry. If you are processing more than 10,000 URL changes a day, what is the play?
If you are operating at that massive aggregator scale, you actually stop using the federated API.indexnow.org endpoint. Federation adds a tiny bit of latency as it routes the data between the engines. At massive scale, you should build your system to POST directly to the specific engine endpoints simultaneously.
So directly to Bing and Yandex.
You submit the payload directly to bing.com IndexNow and simultaneously to yandex.com IndexNow. This eliminates the federation latency entirely and gives your engineering team much tighter control over logging and direct rate limit monitoring for each specific engine.
That is a masterclass in back-end SEO infrastructure. But if listening to us discuss Node.js worker scripts, Redis queues, and Google Cloud Oath credentials is making your head spin, there are existing solutions. This brings us to part 6, automation, tooling, and measurement. The source material uses Kavuno as the ultimate automation benchmark, and I think it's worth exploring how a fully managed system handles this complexity, because it shows what the ideal zero-friction state looks like.
Right. Building this manual queue, writing the exponential backoff logic, and managing the dual protocol constraints takes serious, expensive engineering hours. In a managed platform like Kavuno, this entire architecture is completely abstracted away from the operator.
Let's break down how that case study actually functions in reality. First, IndexNow is enabled by default. From day one, without you ever needing to generate hex keys or host text files on a server, every single publish, update, and expire event is automatically batched and pushed to Bing, Yandex, Amazon, and the rest. Even the company profile pages and blog posts are auto-submitted, which we established the Google API ignores.
But the really impressive automation in that case study is on the Google side. As we extensively discussed, Google's indexing API requires a GCP project and complex OAuth service accounts. A managed system auto-provisions all of that infrastructure programmatically. It creates the cloud project, enables the specific API, generates the service account, and encrypts the credentials at rest. The operator never has to touch a JSON key file or navigate Google Cloud IAM permissions.
And crucially, it handles the database triggers, managing the quotas perfectly so you don't blow past Google's 200-a-day limit without realizing it, and flawlessly executing that year-old deleted lifecycle we just spent so much time dissecting.
All right.
That is the benchmark for modern job board software. If you are currently evaluating tech stacks, you need to actively ask vendors if their indexing infrastructure does this, because, frankly, treating SEO as an afterthought in 2026 is operational malpractice.
However, if you're not using a specialized platform like Kavuno, you still have excellent implementation alternatives. We need to cover the non-Kavuno options.
Let's say a listener is running their job board on a WordPress stack, maybe using WP Job Manager. What is their path forward?
If you are on WordPress, you actually have the easiest path for IndexNow integration. Microsoft officially released and maintains an IndexNow plugin. You install it, and it handles the key generation, the file hosting, and the basic WordPress publishing triggers automatically. Furthermore, if you are already using robust SEO plugins like Rank Math or Yoast Premium, IndexNow support is already baked into their core functionality. You literally just have to find it in the settings and toggle it on.
What if they are on a totally custom React Next.js or Laravel build?
For custom builds, you need to refer back to the architectural blueprint we outlined earlier. You will need your developers to write the custom scripts to handle the HTTP requests and the queuing logic. The guide we're referencing actually provides production-ready code snippets for those environments, which revolve around standard fetch or CURL operations. It's a heavy lift, but it gives you total control.
And there is one more zero-code integration trick mentioned in the source for the infrastructure nerds out there. If your domain's DNS is routed through Cloudflare, you have a massive shortcut.
Yes. If you use Cloudflare for your DNS and CDN, they have a brilliant feature in their dashboard called Crawler Hints. It is literally a single toggle switch. When you turn it on, Cloudflare analyzes the web traffic and cache changes happening on your site in real time, and it automatically submits those changed URLs to IndexNow on your behalf. It requires absolutely zero code changes to your backend.
That is an amazing quick win for Cloudflare users. Okay, so let's say you've built the queue, you've toggled the switches, you are actively pushing payloads. The final piece of the puzzle is measurement. How do we actually know any of this is working and generating a return on the engineering investment?
You have to measure the impact using the native tools. For the IndexNow side of the equation, your primary tool is Bing Webmaster Tools. In March 2024, Bing added a highly specific IndexNow Insights report to their dashboard.
What exactly does that report show an operator?
It acts as a direct empirical feedback loop. It shows you exactly how many URLs your system successfully submitted to the API, how many of those submitted URLs were actually crawled by BingBot as a result of the ping, and ultimately, how many were successfully indexed.
And what's the strategic operational advice here? What specific metrics should a technical marketer be monitoring week over week to prove this is working?
You need to obsessively monitor your backlogs. Specifically, look at the charts for discovered currently not indexed and crawled currently not indexed.
The dreaded waiting room metrics. This is where URLs go to die.
Exactly. Before you implement IndexNow, those numbers are usually incredibly high and stagnant for job boards because of the freshness gap. After you implement this dual protocol push system, you should see those backlogs shrink dramatically. A shrinking backlog means the search engines are processing your URLs instantly rather than leaving them in the waiting room.
And let's talk real benchmarks. Based on the source material, what kind of speed improvement should an operator actually expect to see?
While job board-specific benchmarks are closely guarded secrets by the big aggregators, the source data cites extensive tech publisher benchmarks. A site implementing this architecture can expect their indexing times to drop from the standard 24 to 48 hours all the way down to under 30 minutes to an hour.
From 2 days to 30 minutes. When 41% of your applications come in the first 48 hours, moving your organic visibility from the very end of that window to the very beginning of that window is a pure revenue multiplier. It is that simple. You capture the demand when it is highest.
It fundamentally changes the return on investment of every single listing on your platform.
All right, we are coming into the home stretch of this deep dive. We have covered a massive amount of technical and strategic ground today. I'm going to give a very brief summary, and then we're going to leave you with the exact mistakes to avoid and a step-by-step checklist to get this implemented this week. Here is the summary of what we've unpacked. We covered the freshness gap, the fundamental reality that waiting for pull-based crawlers costs you highly qualified candidates.
And we explained how IndexNow acts as a real-time federated discovery signal, instantly alerting Bing, Amazon, and the emerging AI chat engines that your content exists.
We discussed why Google structurally refuses to join the protocol, requiring you to simultaneously implement the strict Google indexing API. And we gave you the operational blueprint for managing the exact JSON payloads required for publishing, updating, and aggressively deleting stale jobs using 410 status codes.
It is a highly comprehensive strategy, but execution is where things go wrong in the real world. Based on the source material and common developer pitfalls, here are the top 3 implementation mistakes to avoid when building this out.
Let's hear them.
Number 1, ignoring IndexNow entirely just because Google has a larger overall search market share. If you skip IndexNow, you are voluntarily blinding yourself to high-value enterprise users on Microsoft Edge, and you are erasing your job board from the real-time AI agents like Copilot and ChatGPT that rely exclusively on Bing's index for web data. It is a massive strategic error that will hurt you more and more as AI adoption grows.
Okay, what's number 2?
Number 2, panicking and spending hours debugging your codebase when you receive a 202 accepted response instead of a 200 OK on your very first submission. Remember, 202 just means they are checking your text file. Don't touch the code, give it 10 minutes, and try again.
And mistake number 3, let's bring it home.
Mistake number 3 is failing to actively push 410 gone HTTP status codes and URL deleted actions when jobs expire. If you just softly delete jobs in your database without actively pinging the APIs to forcefully remove them from the index, you will accumulate stale listings, you will waste your finite crawl budget, and eventually you will trigger severe Google manual action penalties that can tank your business.
Incredible. Now, to make this completely actionable, we have broken this entire architecture down into a 7-day implementation checklist. If you're a technical operator, take notes. If you're a founder, I want you to hand this exact sequence directly to your lead developer tomorrow morning. Let's walk through the week. Day 1.
Start simple. Generate your 8 to 128 character hex API key and upload the text verification file to your root domain.
Verify you can load it in an incognito browser. Don't write any integration code yet. Just get the validation ready. Day 2.
Prove the connection. Write a simple throwaway script to successfully test a single URL GET key request. Ping the federated endpoint with a live job URL and watch your server logs for that 202 or 200 response code.
Day 3.
Scale the payload. Build the JSON payload structure for a batch post request. Ensure your developers deeply understand the strict constraint that all URLs in the payload array must share the exact same host and subdomain. Write the logic to separate subdomains if necessary.
Day 4. This is the heavy lifting of the week. Map your backend database triggers to the 4 specific lifecycle events: publish, update, expire, and delete. Ensure your system differentiates between soft expires and hard 410 expires correctly.
Day 5. Protect your infrastructure. Implement your queuing system, whether that's Redis or a database table, and write the exponential backoff logic to elegantly handle 429 towns. Too many requests rate limits without dropping crucial indexing data.
Day 6. Replicate and expand. Take the exact trigger logic you built for IndexNow and replicate it to connect the Google Indexing API alongside it. Set up your Google Cloud project, secure your OAuth credentials, and ensure you are pushing the specific URL updated and URL deleted actions for your job posting schema.
And finally, Day 7, the payoff. Open Bing Webmaster Tools in your Google Search Console. Establish your new, accelerated indexing speed baselines, monitor your backlog metrics to ensure they are shrinking, and watch your organic traffic accelerate.
That is a very realistic, achievable 1-week sprint that will permanently upgrade your platform's infrastructure and conversion rates. Okay, before we log off, I want to give you the first 3 actions you should take immediately after you finish listening to this deep dive. Not tomorrow, not next week, today.
Go for it.
Action 1, log into Bing Webmaster Tools and Google Search Console and check your current crawl delay for job postings. Find out exactly how many days late you are to the party right now. You need a baseline to measure against. Action 2, open a random hex generator online and create your API key right now. It takes 5 seconds.
And Action 3, upload that key as a plain text file to your server's root directory. Just plant the flag. You can write the queuing code in the JSON payloads later, but get the validation file live today so you are ready to move.
It is entirely about building momentum. Getting that file hosted is the first tangible step toward pushing your infrastructure into real time. All right, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you look at your product roadmap and budget for the next year. We've spent this entire time talking about human candidates physically typing searches into Google and Bing.
Yeah.
But as AI agents like ChatGPT and Copilot become rapidly more advanced, they are beginning to not just search for jobs, but actively parse the requirements, match them against a user's uploaded resume, and soon they will be applying to those jobs on behalf of candidates in real time. The human might not even execute the search anymore. Their personal AI agent will be doing the hunting 24/7.
That changes everything.
It does. So the strategic question you have to ask yourself is this: how long will a job board survive if its infrastructure still relies on a scheduled web crawler that's 3 days late to the party? In an AI-driven web where agents discover, analyze, and act in milliseconds, if you aren't indexing in milliseconds, you might as well not exist. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.